Yeah, I did think we felt like we did get a little tired and made some mental mistakes more than anything. When you get fatigued, sometimes that happens, and really there isn't a simple answer. If there's a simple answer, is that you just have to fight through it. It's not like we can go do a bunch of conditioning. That's obviously counterproductive, and particularly, we play tomorrow night, so we're going to get home and regroup and get ready.
Welcome in, Hawks fans. Your boy Bryce Lewis back at it again for another Bleav in Hawks episode. Hawks getting the win tonight over the 76ers. Both teams dealing with injuries, but Hawks still should have won, which they did, 127 to 121 over the Sixers. Got close in the fourth quarter. Sixers made it close. Hawks made some mistakes that, I think some people were reminded of that they usually in the past, but they were able to hang on, never trailed in this game, and pretty much was able to, like I said, get a good win here, and now start a streak of very winnable games if you look at their schedule, where the Hawks, I even made a prediction on Twitter that the Hawks could be 500 by the end of this month, because that's how winnable these next 7-8 games are for them, starting it tonight with a good win over Philadelphia. So appreciate you guys tuning into the pod right now, but let's go ahead and dive into it. Hawks, DeJounte missed tonight's game, still with back tightness. Wesley Matthews was out. Patty Mills was out with an illness. They really were very, very short on the bench. Only had 9 guys active for this game. Only played, actually, that's a cap. 10 guys active for this game. And, I know people were interested to see how things would go, but it went pretty well. I mean, pretty much for the most part, you got what you got for what you needed from people. Trey led the way with 37 points, 12 assists. So Trae Young clearly continues to take advantage of the opportunities that he has. Had a good game tonight. Like I said, made some mistakes late, but he did what he needed to do. He is also now 5th all-time in games of 30 points and 10 assists in NBA history. And Trae Young's only 25 years of age. So congratulations to Trae Young, continuing to write his legacy as one of the best balanced point guards, scoring and passing the ball in the league. He's also gotten there in a very few amount of games as well, compared to guys like Harden and others. So Trae Young continues to just be productive, still gets his point, but still gets his teammates involved. So congratulations to Trae on a great job, well done from that perspective. But continuing on, Bogey with 13 in the starting lineup tonight. Didn't have the greatest night tonight, but 13. Okongwu continuing to play well as a starter, continuing a stretch of games playing well. Something I've said about Okongwu is, yes, compared to Clint Capella, you do lose some shot blocking and you do lose some rebounding, but you just get an overall better offensive player. And then you also get a guy who just can do more. And he's also a more versatile defender than Clint Capella as well. So I think you've seen the differences. It feels like, he's taken a step here. Landry Fields actually had a trade deadline conference with media members earlier today, talking about one of the reasons why they stand pat at the deadline was because of an uptick in production and play from Onyeka, and it's been shown for the last few games, which has also been one of the reasons why the Hawks have won 5 of the last 7 games that they've played. So Onyeka Okongwu continues to go out there and play well tonight, 21 and 8 from the floor. Bay with 18 and 11 in this game. Really was active on the boards with Jalen Johnson, who also had 11 and 11 in this game. Like I said, didn't have the greatest from the field shooting night, but got to the free throw line, had 8 attempts, hit all 8 free throws, and did what he needed to do there. Going into the bench, DeAndre Hunter 11, 2 and 2 coming off the bench. A lot of people say that they seem to like the DeAndre Hunter off the bench decision. One question I'll have, obviously, is will he play tomorrow against the Houston Rockets? They haven't had a back-to-back. I think they had a back-to-back last week, towards the weekend, I Bleav, and he didn't play. Obviously, he just got back from the injury then, but we'll see. He's played. He seems fine. He doesn't seem limited. He seems, healthy, but We'll see if if they decide to sit him tomorrow against Houston, or does he continue to play? Like I said, he's been on the minutes restriction, hitting 24 minutes tonight, so he's in the 20 to 25 range right now with that knee. Bruno with 8 points off the bench, continue to play, do what he needs to do out there. Garrison Matthews gave you 8 points tonight. I mean, that's solid contributions from a guy like him. And then Trent Forrest played 8 minutes tonight. Really didn't do a lot offensively at all. Didn't even take a single shot in this game, but gave you 4 assists. So, like I said, good win tonight. Hawks shot 52% from the field, 44% from three. So a hot night from the 3-point line. 82% from the free throw line, 31 assists. They lost the rebounding battle, but which kind of started catching up to them late as the game went on, but able to survive. But overall, Hawks did it what they needed to do in a game that they needed to take care of business, which they did, which was always the big thing overall. So good for them to get a good win tonight over Philly. And like I said, really create a streak of games right now where they could kind of start to take off and play really, really good basketball. So I'm excited to know what that will look like moving forward for them as they continue to hopefully get healthy. Wonder if DeJounte will get back tomorrow from his back tightness. I know people thought that they may have sat him because of the trade deadline. Clearly, he missed today's game. Could have came back. We'll see if he'll come back tomorrow. We don't know how close. We don't know if this is a game, if he's going to miss more games or he'll be back. A couple of guys are sick. We'll see if they'll get back from their illness tomorrow. Be nice to be able to get the guys back against Houston. Just, really make sure you keep the momentum going moving forward. So that's really what's happening there. So with the Hawks over the Sixers. So now I just want to talk about Landry's post-trade deadline comments. Obviously, I made a video. If you haven't seen it, go check it out on the trade deadline recap. Somebody on the Hawks Reddit, we were making fun. Somebody said, "How is it a recap when they ain't do nothing?" That was actually funny. That was funny. I just put a title on there. I know they ain't do nothing, but it was just something to talk about why they ain't do nothing. So, so don't check that out if you haven't. But he actually made some comments today about why the Hawks stood pat at the trade deadline and tried to give insight into what they want to do with this team. This is something he said earlier during his conference with the media.
What we really wanted to lean into was continued focus on our process, continued focus on development. And with any sort of concept that came in, it's not just the short-term results or the short-term goals, I should say, that we're interested in. It's long-term. So with anything, understanding the second and third and fourth order consequences is very, very important to us, because as we're navigating, this league, this space, new cap environment, particular contracts, like all the things, and considering all things, there is a lot of nuances and complexities that go into that, as well as the guardrails, or the guardrails that we call them, of our own DNA, like what is important for us.
So as you could see, one thing he talked about was, obviously I mentioned that he mentioned the uptick, guys playing better, things of that nature, right? But he also talked about just the fact that they're not going to do things for short-term goals and risk long-term, right? Which really just goes into the word of the day, development. Development is something that they wanted when they fired Nate McMillan, because obviously under the Nate McMillan regime, he did not believe in development. I think a lot of Hawks fans felt like a lot of these players kind of stayed the same through those years, never really made improvements. They continue to talk about it now. They talked about the Skyhawks was effective for Jalen, his first year, especially. And that they have that really, they just, like I said, they're focused on long-term, which kind of gives insight, because obviously if you're expecting to be competitive, you're probably thinking short term. How can we be competitive now? And he's saying, well, we want to be competitive now. Sometimes it's hard to have patience to be competitive now, but we also got to think about, well, what can we do long term? Because development is a long game. I've said this before. Development is not cute. It's not sexy. It can be fun depending if you love the grind of development. Obviously, if you love the ascension of Jalen Johnson, then you like development. But it takes a second. Even now, Jalen Johnson getting his first full year of playing still has way more growth to do. He still has a lot of growth to do. You saw today in today's game. There's still things he needs to improve. And I say he's going through like an interesting stretch of basketball right now where like he's doing some good things, but it feels like he's still trying to find maybe that rhythm he had earlier in the season or when he first came back from the injury where he was getting 20 a night with 10 rebounds and 5 assists. Right now, he's been doing a lot of 13, 14, 12-point games. And, and then people have been talking about how he attacks the rim, how he's been somewhat finesse sometimes, how he's just, you don't know why he's not coming maybe with more aggressiveness with his ability and skill that he has. And there's evidence that the Hawks have developed. And that may be also why that you've seen a better stretch of play these last few games. I mean, I could talk about a few players. DeAndre Hunter is a guy who tonight you saw some good things from him. With him, DeAndre Hunter to me is not a stat guy. He's not a guy who's just going to tear it up from the stat line. So you're going to look at the stat line and think he just had an average night. But if you've actually been watching, especially this season under Quin, I feel like Quin has done a really good job of putting DeAndre in places where he is most effective. The post-ups, encouraging, driving to the rim. DeAndre is a big guy, strong guy, can take contact, finish at the rim. He's also now a 40% three-point shooter. That's something that he really has improved. They've clearly worked with players on this team on their shots because they want to put up threes, and DeAndre has seen the success of that. He's now a 40% three-point shooter. I mean, in people's terms, that's a sniper in this league, and he's really improved that part of his game. And now he's made himself an effective three-level scorer realistically because he was really a guy who his shot chart was more mid-ranges and stuff. Now he could hit the three consistently and then also get to the paint and then take the mid-range here and there. The past, he's done some things well. I mean, even defensively, he looks more spry, I feel like, on the defensive end of the ball. I feel like I said, Quin has been using him in his strengths, and you've seen that in his play. And I think that's why, as much as people crap on DeAndre Hunter has improved this year. I know he made waves saying he didn't work on anything, and everybody thought he was serious. But if you really think about it, he's never been a 40% three-point shooter, so he just didn't magically start being able to shoot 40%. It's something that he had to work on, clearly. It's something that the coaching staff worked on with him, and now you're seeing, the fruits of that labor that he put in to do this. Yet Kongu, especially these last stretch of games, has shown improvement. Obviously, we know he's been working on his jump shot, trying to become more of a threat offensively. But really, especially you've seen, he's done a great job when they do pick and rolls, when his man comes off of him, when they're trying to go after maybe Trey get into the lane, of making himself an available target. And then he's has a floater, has a jump shot, has a three. That's why Quin Snyder, at a timeouts especially, likes drawing up those screens that get him open in the corner. And it's funny because it feels like it's not an advanced play, but teams are going to still let him be wide open because really percentage-wise, he hasn't shot that well this year, but he has shot it a little bit better during these last few stretch of games. So Kongu has been inconsistent, I think, and I think that's just also because Clint's here, and it's not allowing him to fully be himself when you're sharing the load with Clint and you're not a starter, you're coming off the bench and things like that. With the starters, it was interesting to see what he would do, and he's played really, really well. And offensively has been a big boost. He's basically giving you 17 a game, giving you 21 tonight. He's made a lot of progress. And you talked about it. Bay is a guy who has been in flux. We know about his shooting slump. We know his three-point shot has been off. But one thing Bay last year was a good three-point shooter, and he was also a mid-range guy. He didn't really attack the paint as much. This year, they clearly said, Bay, attack the paint. You're really good at it. He's a really good finisher. He battles. He fights on the boards. He can get to the free throw line. And now it seems like his shot is starting to come back a little bit. It seems like he's starting to play a little bit better from the three-point line. So that could be big for him. Listen, we know his defense isn't great, but the one thing about Bay is he tries. The effort is there. He's not putting out, lack of effort. Grant Shirley on Twitter, follow him. He mentioned that it's been a while since he felt like Bay has been lost on defense. And I agree with him. People like to criticize him and talk about, Ben can't play defense. We're not going to pay him. Da, 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 da. And the thing about it is, we know what his liabilities are. But I think for him, it's very important. If he knows the scheme and when he knows what the team needs him to do, it benefits him. And I've also said, too, with Hunter and Jalen back, it helps them use Bay more effectively on both ends, where when one of them's out, then he has to be either Jalen or Hunter, and that's not his strength. But for the way they're using him right now, he can kind of play a little bit differently, and I think that's been helping him. And they've worked with him, and you can see that they've kind of figured out how to better use Bay as the season has gone on, and that's why you've seen progress, you've seen better play from that. So those are just three guys that Landry mentioned that he felt like improved. And, the biggest question people have is, the rookies. Like, if that's the case, then why are we playing Patty Mills and them? They're not part of the long term. Like, why are we not giving Kobe run and we're giving, Seth Lundy run? And obviously Muhammad Gay's been hurt, but, why are we not giving AJ run and things like that? Which he mentioned today also about AJ Griffin, that he has some personal issues that created a setback for him, and that's why he's not playing. And they potentially are looking to let him go to the Skyhawks and get some playing time there. So they have a plan. They just obviously are like, all right, we're just going to have him, get himself right before we have him start playing games for us again. So we'll have to see. But, and then like I said, the rookie argument is a fair argument, but this regime clearly believes in, we believe that we can develop with the Skyhawks. I think that the average fan does not respect the G League. They think the G League is a bunch of bums. And so how can you improve against bums, But don't realize there's so much more that goes into it than against who you played against. Think about it. They're running what Quin is running with the main NBA roster. So they're still playing within the scheme. They're still playing within the system. So they're getting reps in the system, getting reps in the scheme. So when they get called up and they play, it's not like I am brand spanking new to this. It's like, well, we've been doing this with the college Skyhawks. Now, obviously, the difference, like if a Kobe gets called up, is he's the main guy on the Skyhawks. He's not going to be the main guy on the Hawks. So he has to readjust how he is because, you're not going to be the main guy. But same thing with Seth. But overall, G League is supposed to be a development league. It's supposed to help develop. You have coaches who want to build their name on development, and you just work with those guys consistently. Sometimes people will question, why does Kobe get called up or Seth get called up and they're not going to play? And sometimes that's just them wanting them to be on the bench, seeing the flow of the game, seeing the coaching, hearing what they're doing, the walkthroughs, the film study, just to be a part of it, because they feel like all of those reps and all of those things can help and benefit those guys at the end of the day, outside of just getting out there and playing against them. Because they're saying, well, why are they not developing? Realistically, if you look at this rotation with the top 8, the 9th guy is only playing probably at best 10 minutes a game. How much development is Seth or Kobe going to get from 5 to 10 minutes a game, depending on the game, when they can play 25, 30 minutes with the Skyhawks and be one of the main players on that team, getting those reps and still working within the scheme? So you could see that the development has been a priority, and that's why he said they're not actively trying to push and make moves and do stuff that's crazy and things like that, because they really want to really focus on long-term. Like long-term, if we can get Kobe up to a certain point and Seth up to a certain point, that will be beneficial for the team. I've talked about guys who are currently on the roster right now. DeJounte Murray, even though he may not be particularly happy about his role, man's having a career high. So, it's not like this man is like, the role has actually, usually when you hear players complain about, I don't like my role, I think my role sucks, my role's hurting me. When you usually think about that, you think that means that they're having a career low or they're struggling and things like that. But realistically, I think DeJounte's having a career high. Now, the thing about DeJounte, if you watch the games, is that he'll have these games where he'll be like kind of mid and then he'll like heat up. Like DeJounte heats up at times, whether it's first or fourth quarter or whatever. He heats up a lot, and that's how he hits his averages. He doesn't maybe have that same steady game throughout. But at the end of the day, clearly when he does get the ability to, I guess, play within his rhythm, plays well. I knew Bogey would be great when they brought these guys in, and Bogey, I think now 6-man of the year candidate. So you've seen, and obviously we know about, like I said, Jalen making the improvements he's made. So there has been improvement amongst this team. And I think you're seeing the fruits of that labor more in this last 6-7 game stretch of basketball from the Hawks than you were earlier this season. Earlier this season, you saw them play really, really well and then really, really bad. And it was just so much up and down stuff going on here. Like, why are we unable to be consistent? Why are we unable to keep up this level of play? And I felt the last 6-7 games, there's been more consistency in their level of play. Maybe outside the last 5-6 minutes of this game tonight against the Sixers, for the most part, the Hawks have been steadily consistent with how they've played. So I think that's the main gist of basically what they're aiming for and what they mean by long-term goals, not letting that affect short-term. Because they're like, yeah, we could affect short-term goals and try to go for that. But the thing is, it's the thing that every GM weighs in the NBA. If you make this move now, you may be destroying your long-term for the short-term. Everybody talked about it with the Lakers. They're destroying their long-term to win now. But if they don't win now, it's going to be hard to do something later because you don't have anything. That's something you have to weigh as a GM. And clearly the Hawks, Landry and them don't feel like it's worth destroying their future to try to win something now. Because at the end of the day, they want to try to build something sustainable over time. That's obviously the best way you want to be, is to build a sustainable winner. Suns don't have a sustainable winner. They are a 1-2 year, we're going for the finals type guy. Maybe 3, depending on what happens with the guys and Beal and Booker and KD. But that's a short term. We're sacrificing long term for right now. And the Hawks, I think, are just not at that point where they're comfortable sacrificing long term for short term. They said at this point, we might as well keep developing, keep having the guys improve, and see where it ends up. One interesting comment, and I didn't forget about this either. And I know about this comment. Landry Fields was asked about DeJounte Murray. He was asked about Trae Young and how they've played together. And the comment raised some eyebrows, I think. So I'll read what he said. He said this: the sample size is getting larger and larger, and assuming you're looking at specific lineups and the defensive and at offensive ratings, which can always be debated as well, you're starting to see that more and more. And yeah, I can't lie to you, the numbers speak for themselves on that. But we're also interested in, well, let's say they're on the court together and based off numbers is not working out. Why is that? What are things that we can do for them in the development aspect to make them look more like the on and off lineups that I'm assuming that you're looking at? And ultimately that then lays something out that is measurable. Those are the things now that from a development standpoint, you can look at and say, okay, can you progress in these areas? If you can't, then yeah, those are times like that. I'm not saying exactly how's going to happen with any player where you have to consider changes that everybody would then be asking and looking for at the end of the day. Now, if you listen to that quote, sounds kind of confusing. Sounds like this man don't know what he's talking about half the time. But what he's basically saying is that he feels like, yeah, sample size is larger, and it may not be what we expected, maybe initially. But at the same time, we do have to reflect at us ourselves and think, is there anything we can do on our end to improve that? Is there anything we can do on our end to help with that? How can we get, when they play with maybe this lineup, how can we get that same consistency with other lineups? And I think that's something that I think Quin's been trying to figure out just in general with his play. And to me, it makes me think to myself that Quin knows DeJounte is not particularly happy about things. And I think Quin is really trying to work with him and work with the team and just trying to get him to buy in and say, listen, I know this isn't maybe particularly what you expected it to fully be, but I really think that if you really lock into it, things will come to you, it will get better, and things will work out. Now, people just feel like Landry kind of leaving the door open, like, yeah, maybe Trae and DeJounte don't work, I think is what a lot of people took from that. was kind of like, okay, why would you say that openly? Why would you even give people the thought that you are basically saying that Trey and DeJounte don't work when you're the person behind that trade? And it's a valid point. It's a very valid point. It's something that people obviously are going to question. Because obviously, if you look at the numbers, it doesn't look the greatest. One of the biggest things is that, you know, you clearly need to look at, okay, what can we do to help them? That's what Landry needs to figure out. And if he doesn't feel like that's the case, he needs to make the move this offseason. He needs to trade Trey. I mean, not Trey. No, god awful. No, not Trey. He needs to trade DeJounte. If he doesn't think it's going to work. At the end of the day, as a GM, you got to come to that decision and be like, okay, like what do we think? Do we think this can work? Because you've done this now for 2 seasons, DeJounte and Trey, at the end of this year. You need to know at the end of 2 seasons if this is going to work. If it's not, make the move. If not, do what you got to do. If you do think it can work, then you got to figure out how can you build around them. And I feel like that's basically what the second half of this year is going to also be, is just that final evaluation period of does Trey and DeJounte work? I think that's what it's going to be. And then, like I said, we'll have to see how DeJounte is. Like I said, DeJounte isn't particularly happy with his role, so he may still want out anyway. We'll have to see how the season progresses. A lot seems like is going to come into this last stretch of the season and see where the team ends up. And then this offseason, maybe we'll finally get some big moves being made, and then we'll see what this team looks like moving forward. So we're going to have to see. But appreciate you guys for tuning in. I think that will wrap it up for us. Like I said, don't forget to follow me on Twitter, Bryson_2K. So catch up with all my Hawks takes there, evaluations of the game, et cetera, et cetera. Also, don't forget, if you're watching this on YouTube, subscribe and like the video. Appreciate you guys. Also, audio, leave a review, leave a comment, hit 5 stars, get other Hawks fans to this pod right here. And we'll just keep it going all day, every day, man. Appreciate you guys, man. Like I said, it's your boy Bryce Lewis. We'll see you next time.